santo ángel de la guarda, nos libre del traidor, hasta poner esta mi alma en las manos del Señor, que murió crucificada por el pueblo pecador. Madre de encarnación y madre del Verbo divino, sea nuestra santísima bendición y guía nuestro buen camino, que solo la recibimos en nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo.
My parents were from Truchas, and of course, in those days, in the 40s, there were virtually no jobs, and so that's why my father went to Colorado to go work, to find work, and that's where I was born. He took the family, and then he got injured there in the mines and returned to to New Mexico, but he didn't want to go back to Truchas, where he was from, because he wanted us to have access to better schooling, So that's why we settled in Santa Cruz. In 1975, that my father passed away after being ill for quite a few years. He had worked in the zinc mines in Colorado, southern Colorado, and actually acquired this illness called silicosis, and it's like dirt, dust in your lungs, and so ultimately that affected his health a lot and was the cause of his death. But it had a profound effect on me because right before we knew he only had a little time left, we decided to have a family meeting and to plan his funeral. And my youngest brother actually suggested that we have a traditional funeral, the kind that maybe these were held like back in the 40s and prior to that, And see, my parents were from Truchas, the high mountain community of Truchas, and it's pretty remote, and in those days, early days, no one would be brought to a funeral home or anything like that. So we decided to have one of these traditional funerals and have the wake service in a morada, in the Santa Cruz morada. And that's where my father lived, and that's where we lived in the community of Santa Cruz here in New Mexico. It's actually kind of like the heart of Española. There's this historic church there built in 1733. It has beautiful works of art, historic works of art, santos, and that's the church that I attended as a child, with my parents, mostly with my mom. My dad, we were 11 brothers and sisters, so a lot of times my father couldn't go. Someone had to stay, My father was not an hermano, a penitente, but he had a lot of compadres, a lot of friends who were, and also relatives. And so we asked permission to hold the funeral service or the wake service there. And of course, inside the morada were all of these historic santos, a crucifix, and then a number of different santos. And these actually graced my father's casket, more than the flowers. The flowers were kind of set to the side, but what really surrounded my father's casket were these old santos. And I had grown up with santos before, attending Mass, at the Santa Cruz Church and in other churches. And also I had been to that morada many times, but you kind of take things for granted. A lot of times you see, but then you really don't see, you know. And so, because I saw all these santos there surrounding my father's casket, they really made an impact on me. And about a year later, I started to carve, and it wasn't a conscious effort. I didn't plan to be a santero. I just needed to do something to fill a void, you know, the void in my life after having lost my father, and I needed to find a way to kind of fill that void, more like with my hands, you know. And so I started to carve, and I started carving little animals and birds, and then I thought, well, maybe I should carve some faces, and started carving those, and then started to expand on those, and then pretty soon someone said, oh, you're carving a santo, and I said, oh, really? I guess maybe I am, you know. It was not planned, and that's how I really got started. So had this funeral service taken place in the Española mortuary, I would have never probably gotten into this, because at that time I didn't know of anyone carving. So it was kind of like a spiritual experience. Well, I started my teaching career in California, in Orange County, and I taught there 5 years, and then I came back to New Mexico and was offered a job in Española, and that was the school that I graduated from, Española High School. So I spent 21 years there as a teacher. Well, actually I taught Spanish and believe it or not, a little bit of German, a basic class in German, and it's because I had minored in German, and they needed a German teacher at the high school, and there was no other person around, so I was reluctant to accept the class, you know, the position of German teacher, but I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I think I was learning Deutsch along with the students, you know, pretty much at the time, but we had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot, and I think I probably taught them some German. I had 2 jobs, you might say, but my most important, or the more important job was teaching, because it's a big, you know, responsibility. You want to do the best job possible. So when I first started carving, teaching was here and carving was here. Then it started kind of going this way, and then it was a point to where it was like almost even, and I had to almost decide, you know, whether I was going to continue teaching, and if I did, I was going to have to scale back, you know, because I couldn't do both. But I thought, well, maybe I should just, you know, go the other way, and I did, and it worked okay. I retired in 1991 when I was 48 years old. And since then, I have been, you know, carving on a full-time basis. I'm still teaching a Santo carving class at the Santa Fe Community College, and I have a full class every semester. And so I'm also sharing this tradition with the community. I started to carve in 1976. And at that time, he was only 6 years old. My daughter was not quite 5, and they would see me working, and obviously they were curious and wanted to be part of the activity. But because I was using knives and chisels, and they were still too small, I didn't want him to go end up cutting themselves. So what I did is I provided them with wood, with paint, and then they would just, you know, paint on wood, whatever they wanted, you know. And then later on, I acquired some straw, and you're familiar with the straw applique work that is done here. So I got some of that, and I cut bits of straw, gave it to them, gave them glue, and told them to do their own thing. So they were doing a little bit of art while I was carving, and not all the time, but whenever they were around, and so they were exposed to the art from the time that they were very small. And as they grew older, they started to actually carve and to paint. My daughter got into painting more than carving. Joseph is 41, so from 6 to 41. He's 41 years old now, and my daughter just turned 40, and they've been doing this centuries-old Santo tradition for years and years and years. And I have two granddaughters right now. They're 6 and 4, and they're very curious, very energetic, and I wonder about their future, But they see me doing this artwork, and they see their mother doing this, and their uncle Joseph, and so they're really excited to see what we're doing, and they want to get into it too, and maybe they'll be the third generation of Santieros. I started it, passed it on to my son and daughter, and maybe they'll. I'm sure they will, because they already have that curiosity, and in fact they've already learned a lot of the terminology. They're even critiquing my work at times. They're going by and saying, "Grandpa, put more gesso on that." I think when you have something, a tradition, that you can share with your family and with others, it's wonderful. I'd like to introduce my son Joseph, who has followed in my footsteps. When he was 5 years old, like this girl here, my granddaughter, he was already watching me carve, and so he picked it up, and he is now an accomplished santero as well. He actually did all the carving on the sarcophagus, the ataúd, I guess, in Spanish. The rosettes, the floral designs, and everything else, that the symbols of the Passion also. He did all of the carving, so he was a big help in this effort. And my daughter also, her name is Krista, and she was a big part of this Santo Entierro as well. She's an accomplished painter. She does retablos, beautiful retablos. And when I was pressed for time, now toward the end particularly, she rescued me. She picked up the paintbrush and went over a lot of the detail. So I really appreciate her help. This ceremony, or this celebration rather, takes me back to March 3rd of 1975, and the family, my family who's here, remembers that day, because on March 3rd, 1975, at around this time, we were all in Mass at Santa Cruz, the Santa Cruz Church, and the person who was there was my father, Jose Inés López. He was in a humble wooden casket. We had a procession that day to the cemetery to bury my father. So that day, March 3rd, 1975, is very much like today for me. It's almost a repeat. Today we had a procession, we had a rosary, we had a homily, we had a blessing,
and the Santo Entierro is here. My father died on February the 28th, and the following 2 nights, March 1st and March 2nd, the wake service was held at the Morada in Santa Cruz. Those 2 evenings, we prayed the rosary, we sang alabados, even though I'm not a penitente and hermano, but I was invited to sing alabados along with them. And what graced my father's casket on that day, or those evenings at the Morada in Santa Cruz, were the historic santos, okay, that are still in that Morada in Santa Cruz. And even though I had grown up and seen these santos all my life, when they graced my father's casket, when they were around the casket or behind the casket, I really focused on them, and apparently they spoke to me, because about a year later I started to carve, and what came out were faces, and then torsos, bodies, and pretty soon they looked like santos. And today this is the result. You know, from that experience, if that wake service had been held at the mortuary, I would not be a santero today. But because that wake service was held in a sacred space, in a sacred place, a morada, that's why I became a santero. Because it was a highly spiritual experience for me. This day also reminds me very much of my mother. And the reason is that she loved to come to the Santuario de Chimayo when she was alive. And she died in February of 2004. And during that time, I was working here at the Santuario. You remember Father Filio. I was part of a team to restore the heart inside the Santuario, working with other santeros, Benjamin López, Cruz López, Patrick Chavez, and several other santeros, along with conservators from the Museum of New Mexico. And it happened during the time that my mother was very sick, and she died on February the 29th, and as a matter of fact, she was buried on March 3rd, the same day as my father had been buried 29 years before. So March 3rd is a very special day for me. A couple of days ago, I received a card from a sister of mine. My sister is back there, Mary. Would you please raise your hand? Okay, Mary sent me this card. She lives in Las Cruces, and I was working furiously to try to finish the Santo Entierro because I needed to have it by yesterday, the 16th. And I got this about the 14th. And if you will permit me, Mary, I'd like to share it with the rest of you. My dear brother Félix, how very proud of you we are as a family, and we all look forward with great anticipation to next Saturday, when your labor of love will become your gift to thousands of people who will marvel at your masterpiece that will be seen for years and years to come. The joy of seeing your creativity and of seeing The joy of seeing your creativity and reflecting on its true meaning will certainly touch the heart of the viewers. The Santuario de Chimayo, Mom's most favorite place, will receive and hold a special place for your peace in Santo Entierro. Mom's presence will be felt, and she would be ever so proud of you, her son she dearly adored. Lots of love to you and yours, Mary, and her husband, Bob.
De nuestro amado Jesús es el mío.